Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. I've got plenty of content to run through today, so hopefully I'm going to start pretty briskly. But yeah, today's session, as the title that you can hopefully see on your screen describes, is all about the modern data stack. So it's the final session in a three-part series of Biztory webinars, a short but sweet kind of pre-Christmas run through of some of our greatest hits. And for those of you that have joined the previous two sessions on visual analytics and customer-facing analytics, you'll know that we've been using the time to share the most common conversations we've had with clients in 2021. And today's session very much tackles a very specific problem. So it's this idea that lots of organizations that we work with feel they could get more out of BI and their analytics front end if they made some smart decisions further down the data stack. For some organizations, this is about revamping existing legacy data stacks with their more modern equivalents. And for some, it's about implementing these cornerstone applications for the very first time. So today, the agenda is quite straightforward. I'll explain the journey Biztory have been on to redefine our kind of best-in-class modern data stack that we now prescribe. I'll run you through the problems that this data stack solves for our clients. And we'll even spend a little bit of time taking a look under the hood on how we use these platforms at Biztory. So before we go any further, I'm conscious that I should probably do a few introductions. So my name is Luke, and this guy in the bottom left-hand corner is my very handsome but incredibly generic avatar, and I'm one of the sales consultants at Biztory. So my job is all about helping organizations figure out how Biztory can in turn help them. I've always worked with data at a geospatial analytics company to start with, more recently as part of the sales team at Tableau. And to be honest, when I joined Tableau, I had the same feeling that I'm sure lots of people on this session have had. I quickly fell for how elegant, simplistic, and let's be honest, kind of downright cool the platform was. I found it really inspiring how organizations could tell stories about their work and learn things they never knew using the power of data plus Tableau. But despite all this positivity, I met lots of organizations who were getting good value from the use of Tableau, but not really hitting the heights they wanted to due to a lack of skills, resource, or experience. So about 2 years ago now, I moved across to join Biztory, and that's the motley crew of people that you can see on your screen right now. So we're a Tableau Gold partner. We're the reigning partner of the year in the UK, very proud of that. But more importantly, we're a team of data consultants. So everybody in the team, everyone you can see on that picture, and many more people who have joined since that picture was taken, has some level of Tableau expertise, but we also have breadth to our skill set. We have skills outside of Tableau that enable our clients to be successful. And the point I'm making here is that by joining Biztory, I've overcome that frustration I felt when I worked for Tableau. I've only been able to half help my customers. We work with exciting, ambitious organizations who want to be super successful with their data, and we provide them with technology and also the skills and expertise to kind of realize that mission, which is really cool. So that begs the question, what do our customers look like? And I believe this framework by Deloitte says it best. So we work with organizations who want to become insight driven. And so not just people who want to do kind of ad hoc things with data, but people who really have a vision for using analytics across their organization. They want to take data, turn it into insights, use those to drive decision makings, and importantly, share that across an entire business. So the guys at Deloitte break this down into a series of stages, and our job really is to progress people through these stages to become mature in being an insights-driven organization. We take them from being impaired, localized, aspirational, analytical, all the way through to being truly insights-driven. And the trick here is that this takes a bit of time and effort, and it's probably too expansive for today's conversation. But we would have thought that, you know, being excellent users of Tableau, having skills and expertise within our team, we could get every organization to this level. And the honest answer is that up to a couple of years ago, this was only a kind of cautious yes. And we've realized there's a relatively unique series of problems and challenges that our customers face outside of the front end we traditionally focused on that stops organizations hitting this nirvana of becoming insights driven. So the rest of this session is all about identifying those problems and explaining how Biztory use a modern data stack to help fix these. So first thing we have to do was select a data stack. If you're sat on this session thinking, what platform should I be using to support my analytics practice, the good news is that we can really empathize with you. We were in exactly the same boat a couple of years back. So we started off by identifying a few success criteria, 3 to be precise, that we then went shopping around for within the different technologies that are available on the marketplace. So the number one reason ourselves and our clients were interested in a data stack was for speed. Things like slow dashboards, slow performance can destroy any vision for becoming an insight-driven organization, puts off the casual users and impedes the more complex data science operations you probably want to carry out as an organization. It needs to be available to any user at any time, irrespective of whatever job you're doing, whatever else is running, however big data volumes are. There's no excuse not to have fast performance. Second up, we were conscious that a data stack needed to connect to what matters. So data is increasingly fragmented from various source locations. It's appearing everywhere and generates a greater resource for your team. But it also causes problems, right? You've got to find a way to get all of this data into a single place. You've got to bring it all together in some way. And it's also important to connect kind of upstream as well, right? You want to connect not only with consumers within your organization, but maybe third parties, maybe connect with other applications and other technologies as well. And we know this needs to all be completely seamless and completely secure. And so the final thing on our shopping list was that it just needs to work. The inconvenient truth about analytics is that a modern data stack is essential to provide optimal insights, but on its own, it provides zero value. So let's take one specific element, a data warehouse. If you just implement a data warehouse, you're not going to realize any or very much kind of value from your data. That's only realized once you start pushing data up to an insights platform like Tableau. So we're after a platform that requires minimal effort to set up, maintain, and configure, reducing the costs and efforts on this part of the flow so that we can instead invest our efforts where they're really required upstream and at our front end. So as we embarked on this task, we realized it wasn't just as simple as choosing various different platforms. We quite quickly realized as well we needed to kind of decide on a philosophy and ethos, a general process and flow that our data platform would prescribe to. And I guess a lot of people on this call are probably very familiar with the term ETL. It's become synonymous for kind of data integration as a whole, and those two words are often used interchangeably. However, it became clear to us that there's nuance here. We realized that whilst data integration does tend to emerge from some combination of extracting, loading, transforming your data, the exact sequence of these things really does matter on how your data stack operates. So traditionally, as I say, people use ETL flows. They extract data, transform it, and load it. So firstly, you carefully select the different sources you're going to get your data from. You extract it before transforming it mid-flow, before eventually loading it into a data warehouse, a final resting place. And then eventually, I guess you're probably going to do some analytics and visualization off the front of that. But when this was conceived in the 1970s, this was a great idea. The process aggregated and summarized data really nicely, reducing volumes, decreasing stress on some pretty scarce resources in terms of storage and compute. But every single pipeline is very highly tailored, very specific to a specific analytical outcome. Essentially, the problem is that extraction and transformation are really closely coupled in this approach. So each pipeline from start to finish is going to be really custom and really complex. And when things change, say new data sources are added or new data models because I don't know, source schemas have changed, or even just your analytical requirements have evolved over time, an entire new start to finish pipeline is probably going to need to be able to be created. Both extraction and transformation need to take place before we can even get data loaded into our warehouse, which is inflexible, might cause some downtime. And this trade-off made sense 20 years ago, right? Storage and compute was really expensive, but that's just not the case anymore. Storage costs have plummeted by a mind-boggling factor of 50 million since 1970. And obviously there's been this explosion of ad hoc sources to get data from, and storage of untransformed data is no longer prohibitive. You can just have data sat around and it's not really going to cost you very much money. And so this is when Biztory stumbled across ELT. So extract, load, transform. And so what we're going to do is extract all of our data and load it straight into our data warehouse before we do anything from it. We're going to get it from loads of different systems and put those tables straight into a data warehouse. When we're in the data warehouse, that's when we're going to do our transformations, before again, hopefully doing some visualization, analytics, all the good stuff we want to do with our data. But the two problems identified earlier, source changes and requirement changes, so downstream and upstream changes, no longer stop the entire party. So extraction/loading and then transformation, they're no longer linked. If we need to change how we're going to do our transformation, there's no problem. Extraction and loading can still happen, data can still flow through our system. And that's a real saving here. Extraction and loading are often very easy to outsource and automate. Transformation is usually very bespoke, very precise analytical needs. So with ELT, we're subdividing tasks to appropriate platforms, as you'll see throughout the rest of this session. And this ELT philosophy really underpins everything we do with our modern data stack. So as I talk through the various technology choices that we prescribe, it's worth keeping this framework in mind and how it plays into this sequencing of events. So for the next few slides, I just want to run through the common challenges that people that we work with encounter. I want to explain what those problems are. I want to explain what technologies we prescribe to fix those problems. And I also want to share some stories of some of our customers and how they've been overcoming these challenges. So first up is getting everything in one place. So we need to put everything together. We need to pull it from various different systems. And this challenge can actually be broken down into a few sub-challenges. So firstly, teams are tasked with getting data out of an ever-increasing list of sources, ranging from traditional databases to seemingly infinite number of web apps and niche tools. Each of these needs a unique connector. Services data needs to be structured in a way that's bespoke to that source. And obviously, it goes without saying that the pure volume of this data flowing through is getting bigger and bigger, heavier and heavier. So deploying these pipelines for the first time is kind of time-consuming, expensive, requires a ridiculously high level of skill. And even when you kind of manage to do it, it often contains lots of errors. But as we can probably assume, the job also doesn't finish there. As a minimum, these pipelines probably need to be constantly pulling through new data from our systems, updating tables, but it's more than likely that the schemas and the sources will update over time. Think of things like web apps, they're particularly guilty for this. And also, it's probably only a matter of time before you're going to get a new data source anyway that needs to spit data out into your data warehouse. Again, costly, time intensive, full of risk. So here at Biztory, we believe that this stage of your data journey, the extraction and the load in our previous slide, is a prime candidate for automation, and we work with Fivetran to do this. So here's Claire to say a little bit more.
Hi, my name's Claire, and I'm an account executive here at Fivetran. I work with our UK and Irish-based companies. So Fivetran is a leading data integration company. We provide cloud-based ELT data pipelines for all of our customers, requiring zero code and zero maintenance. So we do this by providing over 180 pre-built connectors across databases, files, events, storage, and applications. So we replicate all of your data source into the data house of your choice. We would read from your logs automatically and capture schema changes using change data capture, and we'll replicate any new or changed data onto pre-built, ready to analyze schemas in your destination. Why do companies like working with us? Well, we can provide a scalable solution as you grow. We can take all of the maintenance effort and essentially remove that ELT or ETL headache for you, and you can spend more time on the analyzation piece and focus on speed to analytics and building a data-driven culture within your teams.
Cool. So with that in mind, let's tell a little story about one of our customers and how they use Fivetran to power this part of their process. So I'd like to introduce Tom, who heads up IT at Troy. And for years, they've been running custom-built pipelines that require manual intervention on like a daily basis. But as the company's evolved, processes are constantly being digitized, not an uncommon story. For example, the 650,000 invoices that they have to send out every year, that's all going digital, and unsurprisingly, it's producing an explosion in variety and volume of data. So Tom leans on Fivetran to automate this, saving 159 minutes, nearly 3 hours, worth of his team's time every single day that used to be saturated through manual effort of making these flows work. And in turn, it's enabled them to cater to the ever diverse requirements of their business. So actually being able to access the data that their company needs to power its analytics. So challenge number 2, once we've got hold of our data using Fivetran, we need to store and organize it somewhere. So traditionally, again, we've got some sort of sub-challenges and sub-problems to this overarching challenge. Traditionally, on-premise data warehousing was the way to go. But even with traditional data warehousing or even a new breed of cloud offerings, they required a knowledge of how much storage you needed to provision and how much computing resources you needed to make available for kind of querying and processing your data. And these decisions were often made years down the line, and any changes were expensive, time intensive, just often plain impossible to provision. And that contrasts really strongly with the reality of many businesses, where both storage and compute requirements fluctuate on a daily basis. All the while, you're going to have to keep that sort of lightning quick performance that your end users are going to require. And it leaves administrators between a rock and a hard place. You don't want to let down your consumers by not giving them access to the things they want, but often, adding more data, adding more compute can incur really high costs. So a modern data warehouse needs to be able to scale effortlessly. And we're also conscious that there's going to be lots of different people inside and outside of a business who need to access this data. Again, this can be painful, involve costly and inefficient duplications into new locations for your data. And it can be physically hard to administer with the appropriate level of governance to make sure stuff is secure still. So these physical and governance issues mean that many people that would gain access and gain value from accessing data simply can't. And then finally, this is just impossibly complex. Like hosting, maintaining, tuning a data warehouse is traditionally a full-time job, maybe even several full-time jobs. And again, an expensive resource, and even then, there's no guarantee you'll actually get what you want out of the setup. It feels kind of archaic in this era of SaaS deployment models, to be honest. And what's more, there's only a handful of people in a given organization that can navigate this complex environment. But many more maybe within your organizations do have some basic SQL skills who would like to do some stuff if only they had a platform that was simple enough. And so to overcome these challenges, we prescribe Snowflake. In our opinion, the only data warehouse truly built for the cloud with a genuinely unique approach to storing and organizing your data. And so here's Duncan to tell us a little bit more.
I'm Duncan Turnbull and I work for Snowflake. I work with our partners in UK and Ireland, but also sometimes across the rest of EMEA as a partner sales engineer. That means I help them build their practices and develop how they work with Snowflake from a technical perspective. Snowflake is the data cloud supporting lots of different workloads ranging from data warehouse through to data sharing, as well as data engineering and building data applications. We also have a lot of people using us for data science, and all of these workloads run on a single cloud-based platform that we run for you as a service. By delivering this as a service, we allow you to simplify your lives and make it much easier for you to work with not just your data or your partner's data, but actually data from anyone in the world through our data marketplace.
Thank you, Duncan. And so again, let's have a look at how some of our customers use this platform. So our friends at Secret Escapes, very specifically Robin at Secret Escapes, deploys Tableau to support their deploys Snowflake to support their Tableau community. And so there are two elements of this story that really stand out to me. Firstly, they've been implementing this solution during a pandemic. They're a travel company, like all of us, have been incredibly affected by the events of the last couple of years. And because of this, their requirements, their business requirements are incredibly unpredictable. But Snowflake's flexible, scalable approach has enabled them to be super reactive both to the risks and the opportunities that are presented to their business. They can scale up, down, left, right, as their company needs. And secondly, they have a really interesting tier of analysts with basic SQL skills, but not kind of DBA style skills. But due to the elegance and simplicity of Snowflake, these users can run bespoke queries as and when they need within the data warehouse, preventing a bottleneck around Robin and his team. And then so the final challenge, and in turn subset of challenges, is making this data ready for analytics. So the crucial thing here is that for analysts to be able to efficiently and reliably navigate data, a level of business logic is needed to be built in, i.e. a kind of structured way, structured in a way to answer questions that end users typically have and in turn unlock the value that your data has. But engineers that build this logic have to code complicated bespoke transformations based on individual requirements. And often the effort of ironing out assumptions and standardizing practices can prevent engineers from what their primary focus should be, which is obviously writing really, really good code. And as your data and business requirements grow, transformations have to grow as well. As scale increases, you'll need to reuse and manipulate some of your code, as well as spending more time sequencing and scheduling it. And finally, transformations that are created often lack visibility. So they aren't easy to understand, they have no documentation, you get increased risk throughout this process, and it makes collaboration really, really tricky. So to tackle this final set of challenges, Biztory recommend using DBT. DBT enables you to manage and execute these transformations within your data warehouse, moving away from a sort of free-for-all approach to engineering, giving your team structure and discipline. And here's Paul to share a few more words on that.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm a data engineer here at Biztory. We use Fivetran for our data migration and Snowflake for our cloud data warehouse. This allows you to get your data, centralize it, and have it easily accessible for your data needs. When using a tool such as Tableau to access this data, however, it's not necessarily always the most intuitive for users to access and doesn't actually help with centralizing a lot of business logic, which should be in place before this end user consumption is ready. We use DBT as a tool to transform this data to allow us to centralize that business logic, create a single source of truth, and allow a more consumable, packageable data set for the workbooks to work off and for self-service analytics. DBT is our tool of choice because it's very intuitive. It's mostly SQL based, which creates a lower point of entry. It's a lot of documentation that's created for it, and it offers a lot of best practices for how to do that reporting layer or data warehousing layer.
Nice, cheers, Paul. And so yeah, let's tell one final story about a customer that uses DBT then. So this is Tristan. He joined Anyvan to lead their data team earlier this year, and he's been tasked with rapidly transforming them from a company with minimal analytical capabilities to becoming an insight-driven organization. So they need to implement new tech at a really, really fast speed, and that means Tristan has to have several data engineers working in their data warehouse at any one time, transforming their data, as well as being kind of synchronized with each other, so they're working as a team. And importantly, anything they do produce needs to be super transparent. He's going to keep on adding new heads to his team, and so people need to be able to pick up this work in the future. And that's what DBT does for him. It provides this framework, meaning that he's returned insight to the business in weeks, and he'll have a production-ready data stack established in just a few months in a really robust and transferable way. And so just to read back what I've said to you then, the sort of before state for Biztory was this. We were used to having people that had lots of data in lots of different places. We were used to telling them that Tableau would fix lots of those problems, that they could visualize and do analytics within Tableau, and ultimately to get to these end goals that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. But the kind of bit that we felt was missing and the bit we've added is these three technologies. So Fivetran, data pipelining tool to connect and maintain connections to your data. Snowflake, the only truly cloud data warehouse, a data warehouse and a data lake with engineering capabilities, data science capabilities, going to connect out to all different parts of your data ecosystem. And finally, this DBT layer that acts as a transformation layer, orchestrating and conducting all the different queries that are happening within your setup. And so now, time for a very brief highlighted demo of kind of how this stack works in reality. And to do this, I'm going to go back to kind of home turf and jump straight into Tableau. So you can see here, this is Biztory's internal instance of Tableau. I'm really blessed. I get to use awesome analytics to drive my decision making on a daily basis. And today's use case is actually one that I use literally every single day. It's sort of operations analytics using Tableau and various data sources. So I can see as a user, I get served up some gold standard dashboards. These are the things here. which give me kind of answers to questions that I know I'm going to have on a daily basis, as well as some raw data and the ability to interrogate those data sources in my own time. So if we look at the gold standard dashboard for a second, I as a user can click into a view that people have created on my behalf. I can wait for a second whilst it loads because it's a live demo. And then I can do really simple things like see which consultants are available over which time period. So maybe I want to see how Anthony's getting on over the next few weeks, or alternatively, I want to play with some filters to toggle things like date ranges or languages that I'm interested in. The idea here is that the sort of pre-canned analytics I can very, very quickly carry out on my own. Alternatively, I might want to just ask some ad hoc questions. So if I click on this data lens, I can use Tableau's Ask Data functionality to query my data using natural language, so just spoken English essentially. So let's type a simple question like, how many hours, how many ordered hours, let's call it, not hours, ordered hours. I can select the field that I'm interested in, can press enter to execute on the query, and Tableau very quickly just spits out a number. In this case, it's a really large number that doesn't mean very much to me. That's because the thing I'm actually interested in as a user here is how this gets broken down by consultants. So let's type in by consultant. Again, Tableau is really good at taking that data, visualizing it, giving me answers to questions. I can see how many hours our different consultants have delivered. And again, I can keep on iterating, right? Maybe I want to break this down and see it just by the UK. Maybe I want to see it in some of a chart format, such as a tree map. Basically, Tableau empowers me to do lots of ad hoc exploratory disposable analytics. But the thing that I want to emphasize today is that this is only possible because data is really carefully curated from multiple different sources, and I, as an analyst, am the benefactor of that. And so what I want to do now is just drop into what the journey looks like below the surface. I, as an end user, only really care about this thing, but I've got to be honest about the fact that lots of exciting things are happening below the surface that you can't see. So you'll remember from how we kind of structured the modern data set, the first thing that happens is we use Fivetran to pull data into a location. So in this instance, we're connecting to various different data sources, such as Google Sheets, Facebook Ads, HubSpot, and we're loading them into a destination. So we're loading them into Snowflake. And these things just tick over. One of them's active at the moment, a couple of them are paused. If I wanted to, I could add new connectors. Say one day I decide we need to use Zendesk in our organization. Great, I'll just connect up to Zendesk using Fivetran and load that data into Snowflake. So next up, we have Snowflake. And again, you'll remember the thing we're doing here is loading data in a kind of raw, relatively untransformed format. And so we have this set of databases here called the Biztory source data sources. And these are essentially a data lake, right? It's a big pile of unstructured data that hasn't had anything doing to it. We've simply dumped the data there using Fivetran. So what we now need to do is transform that data so that it's got the business logic we need as an organization. And that, you'll remember, is where dbt comes in. So I just close down this rather intimidating graph. You'll remember we were looking at some planning data. So I search for planning in dbt. I can see these are all the transformations that happen within our kind of planning workflow. I can even view them as this really easy to understand graph. And we can see here all the things that happen from kind of data source on the left-hand side through to actually publishing data to Tableau on the right-hand side. Each of these little steps is sort of an action, part of the recipe that gets carried out to make sure the data is tidy and clean. And I can click through these to learn a little bit more. So maybe if I refocus on this, for example, I can see that what we're doing here is combining bits of data from HubSpot again, Google Sheets, into some kind of operation that eventually gets spat out at the front end. So once these transformations have happened, you'll remember from my picture, we then go back into Snowflake. So this transformed data gets reloaded into Snowflake. Well, it never really leaves. The transformations happen within Snowflake. And that's what these final data sources here are. Anything with analytics in front of it means that it's analytics ready data that we as users can access. But again, I still don't log into Snowflake as a kind of end user. I instead have it nicely surfaced up to my Tableau environment for me. And alongside the ability to do self-service analytics and dashboarding that we've already seen, you'll notice there's also some data sources here. And I can use the Tableau kind of cataloging and lineage functionality to really supplement the modern data set we have sat underneath. So I can see what we're connected to. In this instance, it's that Snowflake data source that we just looked at. I can see how regularly the data updates. I can see what workbooks it's connected to. And I can even get a more kind of granular breakdown of what's included here. So what workbooks, sheets, dashboards, who owns them, basically a full view in both directions, including all the different fields that make up our data source. And so you can have a sort of self-service data cataloging, data lineage view at the front end, and then you can have more detailed descriptions behind the scenes for more advanced users. So I'm coming towards the end of this session now. I just wanted to spend one last minute or two reminding ourselves of why organizations do this. And so the numbers I'm about to show here are from a survey that Snowflake conducted on their own existing customers around the value they got out of using a modern data stack. So first things first, organizations experience growth, not just in the amount of data they're consuming or the number of people making data-driven decisions, but in operational metrics such as internal productivity. 84% of respondents described revenue growth as they discovered new revenue-driving initiatives. Second up, we have cost. So 96% of respondents to this survey saw a reduction in cost. Again, this isn't just in like the subscription license fees for platforms that they were paying, but it's kind of across the board. It's total cost of ownership. It's the cost of implementing and maintaining multiple data silos on legacy systems, which is significantly higher than using a modern streamlined data stack. And finally, risk. 95% described a reduction in technology risk, partly made up for by avoiding vendor lock-in. You'll notice that everything we've prescribed here is incredibly agnostic, but also reduce security risk. So as you move to a security as a service model with data consolidated in a well-governed, easy to administer environment, risk drops dramatically. And that's pretty much me done for today. It goes without saying that we love to explore these conversations, these topics in a little bit more detail. So please do reach out to us if you've got any questions. And I guess just a quick callback as well. Both the session I've just run here and the sessions run by my colleagues Joffrey and Joe will be available on biztory.com very shortly. And I guess the only thing left for me to say is thank you very much for your time. And yeah, look forward to catching up with you guys on these topics down the line. Cheers all. Bye.